You know what hurts more than being invisible? Being invisible while everyone around you pretends you matter. That's been my entire life. I'm Vivian, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the shadow in my family, not the golden child, not the one they bragged about at dinner parties, just there, a placeholder, an afterthought. And honestly, I got used to it for a while. But there's only so much a person can take before the anger starts bubbling up, before the pain becomes too heavy to carry in silence. My sister. Oh, where do I even start with her? She's always been the star of our family, the prodigy, the one with potential. From the time we were kids, everything revolved around her. Her dance recitals, her academic achievements, her dreams, her future. Meanwhile, I was just the other daughter, the one who was doing okay, I guess. Not remarkable enough to celebrate, not struggling enough to worry about, just existing in the background, while my parents poured every ounce of their attention, their resources, their love into making sure she had everything she needed to shine. And I worked. God, did I work. I built a business from the ground up. I spent sleepless nights learning, failing, getting back up, and trying again. I sacrificed relationships, time, my own mental health to create something I could be proud of. And you know what my family called it? A hobby. A cute little side project. Something I did to keep myself busy while the real success story unfolded with my sister. It was never about me. It was always about her. Always. The resentment doesn't come overnight. It builds slowly, like water filling a glass drop by drop, until one day it overflows, and you realize you've been drowning for years. Every achievement I had was minimized. Every milestone was met with a polite smile and a quick redirect to whatever my sister was doing. Got my first major client? That's nice, honey, but did you hear your sister made the dean's list again? Doubled my revenue? Great, sweetie, but we need to talk about your sister's internship opportunity in Europe. It was exhausting, soul-crushing, and the worst part? I still craved their approval. I still wanted them to see me. Then came the phone call. My mother. Her voice had that particular tone she uses when she wants something but is pretending it's a casual conversation. You know the one. Sweet but with an edge of expectation. She asked how I was doing, which should have been my first red flag, because she never asks how I'm doing, unless she needs something. And then she got to it. Your sister's tuition, the next semester. They're short, really short, and they need help. They need my help. Specifically, they need my money. I felt my stomach drop. Not because I didn't have the money. I did. My business was doing well. Better than well, actually. But because in that moment, it crystallized everything I'd been feeling for years. They didn't call because they were proud of me. They didn't call because they wanted to celebrate my success. They called because I was useful. I was a backup bank account, a safety net for the golden child's future. And the casual way, she asked, like it was just assumed I'd hand over thousands of dollars without question, made my blood boil. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no either, not right away. I asked questions. How much? Why now? What happened to the college fund they'd been building since she was born? The fund they never built for me, by the way, because I was just supposed to figure it out on my own. My mother got defensive. She gave me vague answers about unexpected expenses and investments that didn't pan out, and how family helps family. That last part almost made me laugh. Family helps family. Where was that energy when I was struggling to get my business off the ground? Where was that support when I needed help? I told her I'd think about it. I needed time. Time to process. Time to investigate. Because something didn't add up. My parents aren't wealthy, but they're not destitute either. My father has a stable job. They own their home. So where was all their money going? Why were they suddenly desperate for cash? I needed answers. And I knew I wouldn't get them from my mother's carefully crafted phone calls. So I hired someone. A financial consultant, someone who could dig into the publicly available records and help me understand what was really going on with my family's finances. And what I found out made me sick. They weren't just short on tuition money. They were drowning in debt. Massive, suffocating debt. Credit cards maxed out. Loans against the house. Personal loans from friends. And all of it, every single dollar, was being funneled into my sister's education and lifestyle. Private schools. Expensive programs, study abroad trips, Designer clothes because she needed to look the part of a successful young professional. But it got worse. They'd been taking out loans based on my sister's future earning potential. They were literally betting everything on her becoming successful enough to pay them back one day. The pressure they were putting on her future was insane. But the part that destroyed me was realizing they'd been planning to use my money too. Not asking, planning. They'd already calculated how much they could reasonably extract from me without me walking away completely. I was part of their financial strategy, and nobody had bothered to ask if I was okay with that. The anger I felt was unlike anything I'd experienced before. It wasn't hot and explosive. It was cold, calculated. It settled into my bones and made me see everything clearly for the first time. My parents didn't love me less than my sister. They didn't value me as a person at all. I was a resource, a tool, something to be used when needed and ignored when not. And my sister, whether she realized it or not, was the beneficiary of this twisted dynamic. She got to be the princess, while I was expected to be the servant funding her castle. I thought about confronting them immediately, screaming at them, demanding answers, but I realized that wouldn't change anything. They'd gaslight me, tell me I was being dramatic, remind me of all the things they did for me growing up as if basic parenting was a debt I owed them. They'd make me feel guilty for even questioning their treatment of me because that's what they'd always done. Any time I expressed hurt or disappointment, it was turned around on me. I was too sensitive, too selfish, too ungrateful. So I decided to take control in a different way. I wasn't going to give them money for my sister. I wasn't going to be their bailout plan. But I also wasn't going to engage in a fight I couldn't win. Instead, I was going to show them exactly what real support looks like. And I was going to give it to the one person in my family who actually deserved it. My brother, the forgotten middle child. He was always just kind of there too, like me. Not the golden child. Not particularly remarkable in my parents' eyes. Just doing his thing. Going to a state school instead of the prestigious private university my sister attended. Working part-time jobs to help cover his expenses because my parents were too tapped out funding my sister's dreams. He never complained, never demanded attention. He just quietly existed and did his best, and I realized he was the only one in the family who had never expected anything from me. He'd never treated me like an ATM or a side character in someone else's story. He was just my brother. His graduation was coming up, a milestone that my parents were barely acknowledging because they were too stressed about my sister's next tuition payment. I asked him what his plans were after graduation, and he told me he'd accepted a job in a city about an hour away. Good opportunity, decent pay. The only problem was transportation. He'd been taking the bus everywhere for years, saving money, but this new job wasn't on a bus route. He was trying to figure out how to afford a reliable car on an entry-level salary, and I could hear the stress in his voice even though he tried to play it cool. That's when I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to buy my brother a car, not a used beater that would break down in 6 months. A real car. Something reliable and nice that he could be proud of. Something that would make his life easier and show him that someone in this family actually gave a damn about his success. And I was going to do it in a way that made a statement. I spent weeks planning it. Found the perfect car. Something practical but nice. Not flashy, because that wasn't his style, but definitely a step up from anything he'd ever owned. I handled all the paperwork, put it in his name, paid for the insurance for the first year. I wanted him to have no strings attached, no payments, no stress. Just a genuine gift from someone who appreciated him. The graduation ceremony was typical. Boring speeches, uncomfortable folding chairs. My parents were there but distracted. My mother kept checking her phone, probably looking at payment deadlines. My father looked tired and stressed. My sister came too, late as always, because her schedule was obviously more important than being on time for her brother's graduation. I sat there watching them and felt nothing but contempt. These people had raised me. I should love them. I should feel connected to them. But all I felt was anger and disappointment. After the ceremony, we all gathered outside. My brother was in a good mood, smiling and taking pictures with his friends. I pulled him aside and told him I had a graduation present for him. He laughed and said I didn't have to get him anything, that just showing up was enough. That broke my heart a little because his expectations were so low. He was used to being overlooked, too. I walked him to the parking lot, and when he saw the car with a big bow on it, his face went blank. Complete shock. He looked at me, looked at the car, looked back at me. He asked if I was serious, and I handed him the keys and the folder with all the paperwork. I told him, congratulations, told him I was proud of him, told him he deserved this and so much more. He actually cried. My tough, never complain, always roll with it brother stood there with tears running down his face and hugged me so hard I could barely breathe. He kept saying thank you over and over, and I realized this might have been the first time in his life someone had made a grand gesture for him, the first time he'd been prioritized. And that made me angry all over again, because how had our parents failed us both so completely? Of course, the rest of the family had followed us to the parking lot. They saw the car, they saw my brother's reaction, and I watched in real time as my father's face went from confusion to understanding to absolute rage. He knew. He immediately knew that this was money I could have given them for my sister. Money they thought they had access to. Money they'd probably already mentally allocated to their debt. My father walked up to me, and I could see the vein in his forehead pulsing. His face was red, his fists were clenched, and he screamed at me right there in front of everyone. That money was for her fees. His voice cracked with anger and desperation. That money was for her fees. Like it was a foregone conclusion. Like my money belonged to them. Like I had betrayed some unspoken agreement by daring to spend my own money on something they hadn't approved. I felt a calm wash over me. This was it. This was the moment I'd been unconsciously preparing for. I looked him dead in the eye and said, no, that money was mine. My money. From my business. The business you called a hobby. The success you never acknowledged. And I chose to give it to someone who's never expected anything from me. Someone who's never treated me like a walking wallet. My mother started crying. Not because she was hurt, but because she was trying to manipulate the situation. She does this thing where she cries to make everyone feel guilty and shift the attention to her feelings. She said I was tearing the family apart, that I was being selfish, that my sister needed help and how could I be so cruel. And my sister, God, my sister just stood there looking confused and entitled at the same time. She actually asked why I'd spend money on a car for him when she needed tuition money. Like it was obvious that her needs should come first. Like my brother's achievement and future didn't matter. Like the hierarchy we'd all been living with our entire lives was just the natural order of things. I was done. Completely done. I turned to all of them and let everything out. Every year of resentment. Every ignored achievement. Every dismissive comment. I told them exactly how they'd made me feel. Invisible. Used. Unimportant. I told them about the debt I'd uncovered. About their plan to use me as a backup funding source. About how they'd never once celebrated my success, or asked how they could support my dreams. I told my father that his scream wasn't about money, it was about control. About his plan falling apart. About realizing that I wasn't going to play the role he'd assigned me. I wasn't the supporting character in my sister's story. I was the main character in my own life, and I was done letting them write my script. My sister tried to defend herself, saying she didn't know about any of this, and maybe that was true. Maybe my parents had shielded her from the financial reality. But her ignorance didn't excuse her entitlement. She'd benefited from the imbalance our entire lives and never once questioned it. Never once stood up for me, or acknowledged the disparity in how we were treated. She was complicit even if she didn't realize it. If you've ever been in a situation where you had to choose between keeping peace with your family and respecting yourself, drop a comment and let me know how you handled it. Because this was the hardest moment of my life, and I need to know I'm not alone in this. My father tried to guilt me. He brought up everything they'd ever done for me, fed me, clothed me, put a roof over my head. As if that was exceptional parenting and not literally the bare minimum legal requirement. He said I owed them, that family takes care of family. And I laughed. I actually laughed because the hypocrisy was so blatant it was almost funny. I told him that if family takes care of family, where was that energy when I needed support? When I was building my business with no help, no encouragement, no recognition? When I was struggling and they were too focused on my sister to even notice? The rule only seemed to apply when they needed something from me. My mother switched tactics. She went from crying to angry, told me I was being vindictive, that I bought my brother a car just to hurt them, and maybe there was some truth to that. Maybe part of me wanted them to feel a fraction of the pain I'd been carrying for years, but mostly, I did it because my brother deserved it. Because someone in this family should be supported without strings attached, because I wanted to show what real love and generosity look like, not the conditional, transactional version they'd been offering. The argument went in circles. They couldn't understand why I was so angry, or they didn't want to understand. It was easier to paint me as the villain, the selfish daughter who abandoned her family in their time of need. But I wasn't abandoning them. I was saving myself. There's a difference, and I wish I'd learned it sooner. My brother, to his credit, tried to defend me, tried to make them see how they'd treated me, but they didn't want to hear it from him either. He was just the other overlooked child. His opinion didn't carry weight in a family where only the golden child's voice mattered. I realized standing there that nothing I said would change their minds. They'd built an entire identity around my sister's success. They'd invested everything into this narrative, and admitting they'd failed me would mean admitting they'd made catastrophic choices. People don't do that easily. They don't dismantle their worldview because you ask them to. They dig in deeper, defend harder, and make you the problem. So I stopped trying to make them understand. I turned to my brother and told him I was leaving, told him he had my number, and I'd always be there for him. And I walked away, just like that, left them standing in that parking lot, with their anger, and their disbelief, and their crumbling financial house of cards. The days after were weird. I felt lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because I'd finally stood up for myself. Heavier because cutting off your family, even a toxic one, comes with grief. You grieve the family you wish you had, the parents who should have loved you equally, the sister who should have been your ally, the childhood that should have been different. My phone blew up for a while. My mother called crying. My father sent angry texts. My sister left voicemails that ranged from confused to accusatory, but I didn't engage. I'd said what I needed to say. The rest was just noise. They didn't want a conversation. They wanted compliance. And I was done complying. My brother, though, he checked in on me, asked if I was okay, told me what I'd done meant more to him than I could know. We started talking more, really talking, and I realized we'd both been casualties of the same dysfunctional system. He got it. He understood the pain of being invisible, and having that validation, having someone who shared my experience acknowledge that it was real and wrong, helped more than I can express. My business kept growing. Turns out, when you're not emotionally drained from family drama and resentment, you have a lot more energy to focus on your goals. I took on bigger clients, expanded my services, started making the kind of money that would have blown my parents' minds if they'd ever paid attention. And I won't lie, there was satisfaction in that, in succeeding despite them, in proving that their dismissal of my work was wrong, in building something substantial that had nothing to do with their support or approval. I did it myself, on my terms. And nobody could take that away from me. The financial reality caught up with my parents eventually. I heard through my brother that they'd had to downsize, sell the house, move somewhere smaller. My sister had to transfer to a cheaper school and get a job. The life they'd been artificially propping up collapsed under the weight of debt they couldn't sustain, and part of me felt vindicated. They'd made their choices. They'd prioritized one child's dreams over financial stability and the well-being of their other children. They'd gambled and lost. But another part of me just felt sad. Sad that it came to this. Sad that they couldn't see what they were doing until it was too late. Sad that my sister, for all her entitlement, was also a victim of their bad choices and warped priorities. She'd been set up to fail under the crushing weight of their expectations and debt. My mother reached out months later, not to apologize, not really, but to try to rebuild some kind of relationship. The conversation was stilted and uncomfortable. She wanted to pretend the blow-up never happened, wanted to just move forward without addressing anything, and I told her I couldn't do that. If we were going to have any relationship, we needed to talk about the past. We needed acknowledgement. We needed change. She wasn't ready for that. Maybe she never will be. But I put the boundary down anyway. I'm not going back to being invisible. I'm not going back to being the family ATM. If they want me in their lives, it has to be on terms that respect my worth as a person, not just my usefulness as a resource. My father and I haven't spoken. I don't know if we ever will. His anger, His scream that day, that was about more than money. It was about his failure as a father and a provider. About his inability to manage his family's finances. About watching his carefully constructed world fall apart, and instead of taking responsibility, he blamed me. That's easier. I get it, but I don't have to accept it. My sister sent me a message eventually. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was closer than anything my parents had offered. She said she was starting to understand things she hadn't seen before. That she was sorry if she'd been part of hurting me. If. That word bothered me, but it was something. Maybe one day we'll be able to have a real relationship. Maybe not. I'm not holding my breath. The relationship I have with my brother, though, that's solid. Real. Built on mutual respect and understanding. He's doing well at his job. The car's running great. We get dinner once a month, and actually talk about our lives. He's the family I chose to invest in, and that decision has paid dividends in ways that have nothing to do with money. I've learned a lot through this, about boundaries, about self-worth, about the difference between being selfish and practicing self-preservation. For years, I let my family's perception of me shape how I saw myself. I internalized their dismissal, and believed on some level that I wasn't as important as my sister, that my achievements weren't as valid, that my feelings didn't matter as much. But that was a lie. A lie they told themselves to justify their choices, and a lie I accepted because I didn't know better. My success is real. My feelings are valid. My worth isn't determined by whether my parents choose to acknowledge it. And walking away from people who can't see that, even when those people are family, isn't cruelty. It's survival. There are still hard days. Days when I wonder if I overreacted. Days when I miss the idea of having a close family, even if the reality was never that great. Days when I see other people with their parents and feel a pang of something that might be jealousy or grief or both. But then I remember how I felt standing in that parking lot. The weight of my father's scream. The casual cruelty of my sister's confusion. The years of being invisible. And I know I made the right choice. You can't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. You can't sacrifice your mental health and financial stability to prop up someone else's dreams, especially when they wouldn't do the same for you. And you can't keep waiting for people to change when they've shown you over and over exactly who they are. My business is thriving. I'm thriving. I've built a life I'm proud of without my family's support. And honestly, that makes it even sweeter. Every success feels like proof that I was right to bet on myself. Every milestone is validation that I didn't need their approval to make it. I did it anyway, despite them. And my brother has become one of my biggest supporters. He tells people about my business, refers clients to me, celebrates my wins like they're his own. That's what real family does. That's what support looks like. Not the conditional, transactional version my parents offered, but genuine pride and encouragement, with no strings attached. I'm not saying I'll never speak to my parents or sister again. Life is long and people can change, but any reconciliation has to come with real acknowledgement of what happened. Real apologies. Real change in how they treat me. I'm not interested in a superficial peace, where we pretend everything is fine, and fall back into old patterns. I'd rather have no relationship than a toxic one. Setting that boundary was terrifying. Going against family, even dysfunctional family, goes against everything we're taught. We're supposed to forgive, supposed to keep trying, supposed to value family above everything. But that advice assumes the family is acting in good faith, that they love you and want what's best for you. And when that's not true, when family is actively harmful, that advice becomes a trap. I'm sharing this story because I think a lot of people are trapped like I was, stuck in family dynamics that hurt them but too scared or guilty to leave, convinced that they're the problem. That if they just tried harder, or gave more, or were better, things would improve. But sometimes the system itself is broken. Sometimes, the roles you've been assigned are impossible. Sometimes the only winning move is not to play. If my story resonates with you, if you've experienced something similar, I want you to know you're not alone. The pain of being overlooked is real. The anger at being used is justified. And the decision to prioritize yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. You can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't fix people who don't think they're broken. I also want to say that walking away doesn't mean you stop loving them. I still love my parents in a complicated, painful way. I still wish things were different. But love isn't enough. Love without respect, without reciprocity, without basic appreciation for who you are, that's not sustainable. That's just hurt dressed up in family obligation. The money I spent on that car, the money my father screamed about, was the best investment I ever made. Not because of the car itself, though my brother definitely needed it, but because it was the catalyst for me taking back my power. It was me saying my money, my choice, my life. It was me refusing to be a supporting character anymore. And that was priceless. My father's scream still echoes sometimes. That money was for her fees. The entitlement in those words. The assumption. The complete disregard for my autonomy. It encapsulated everything wrong with our family dynamic in one sentence. And my response, my refusal to back down, that was me finally finding my voice after years of silence. I don't regret it. Not the car. Not the confrontation. Not the distance I've put between myself and my parents. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that they couldn't be the parents I needed. I regret the years I spent trying to earn love that should have been freely given. But the choice I made that day? I'd make it again in a heartbeat. Your worth isn't up for debate. Your success isn't less valid because someone doesn't acknowledge it. Your feelings aren't less important because someone dismisses them. You are allowed to take up space, to set boundaries, to prioritize your own well-being, even when, especially when, the people who should support you are the ones tearing you down. So here I am, Vivian, the invisible daughter who became visible on her own terms, the overlooked child who built something remarkable without family support, the woman who chose herself when everyone else expected her to sacrifice. And I'm not sorry. I'm angry still. Yes. I'm hurt. Absolutely. But I'm also free. Free from expectations that were crushing me. Free from a dynamic that was killing me slowly. Free to build the life I want with people who actually value me. And that freedom, that's worth more than any amount of tuition money. More than my parents' approval. More than maintaining a false peace. It's worth everything. If you're struggling with a similar situation, if you're wondering whether you have the right to stand up for yourself against family, let me tell you this clearly. You do. You absolutely do. Your life is yours. Your success is yours. Your money is yours. And nobody, not even family, gets to guilt you into sacrificing yourself for their priorities. I'm building something beautiful now. A life based on mutual respect and genuine connection. A business I'm proud of. Relationships that fill me up instead of draining me. And every day, I'm a little less angry and a little more at peace with my choices. The pain is still there, probably always will be, in some form. But it doesn't control me anymore. That's my story. The day I gave my brother a car, and my father screamed that the money was for my sister's fees. The day I finally stood up and said no more. The day I chose myself. And if you're facing a similar crossroads, I hope my story gives you the courage to choose yourself too. Because you deserve people in your life who celebrate your success, not people who only notice you when they need something. Drop a comment below, and let me know your thoughts. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? How did it go? And if you found this story helpful or relatable, please share it. Someone in your life might need to hear that they're not alone, that their feelings are valid, and that it's okay to walk away from relationships that hurt you, even when those relationships are family. Thanks for listening to my story. Take care of yourselves out there.